This is Ken Smith reminding you it happened today, September 14th. But the year was 1716. The first lighthouse in the American colonies is lit in Boston Harbor. It was on this day that George Friedrich Handel finishes The Messiah, an oratorio that he wrote working nonstop for 23 days, 1741. It was on this day that Francis Scott Key pens the words to the Star-Spangled Banner while witnessing the bombardment of Fort McHenry in Baltimore Harbor, 1814. Golf's first recorded hole-in-one was scored by Tom Morris in Scotland on the 8th hole, 1868. Teddy Roosevelt was sworn in as the youngest man to serve as U.S. president on this day, after William McKinley finally died from an assassin's bullet. He was 42 years old and 322 days, making him the youngest president until John F. Kennedy was elected, making him the youngest president. He was 43 years old, 236 days at his inauguration. He was 186 days younger than Teddy Roosevelt when he was sworn in as president. It was on this day the Nazis gained 107 seats in the German election. That was in 1930. It would take almost a decade before the full horror of that Nazi government would be seen as it erupted in World War II. It was on this day the first prefrontal lobotomy was performed at George Washington University Hospital in Washington, D.C., 1936. It was on this day that the U.S. Congress passes the first peacetime draft law. It was 1940, in preparation for entering World War II. It was on this day, the same year, 1940, it was called the Battle of Guadalcanal. An estimated 1,600 U.S. troops were killed. Over 4,000 were wounded, and several thousand more died from disease. That's U.S. troops. At that one battle of Guadalcanal, the Japanese lost 24,000 soldiers. 1940. It was on this day groundbreaking ceremonies occurred for the United Nations World Headquarters in New York City, 1948. IBM introduced the RAMIC 305, the first commercial computer with a hard drive that weighed the entire computer over 1 ton, 1956. It was on this day that Walt Disney is awarded the Medal of Freedom at the White House, 1964. It was on this day, just days after, terrorists attacked the World Trade buildings, then an historic national prayer service was held at the Washington National Cathedral for the victims of 9/11. A similar service was held in Canada on Parliament Hill, the largest vigil ever held in that nation's capital. 2001. It was on this day that restrictions on the traditional Latin Mass are officially removed in the Roman Catholic Church, 2007. Elizabeth Warren announced her intention to run for the Democratic nomination for the 2012 Massachusetts senatorial election, 2011. It was on this day former Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort pleads guilty to conspiracy charges and agrees to cooperate with the government investigations, 2018. It was a year ago that a drone attack on the oil fields in Saudi Arabia takes out half of the country's oil production. And from that one drone attack, 5% of the world's oil was taken offline. But that was September 14th in the past. This is September 14th, 2020. So far, 25,941 college students have reported positive tests to the COVID-19. And how many of them went to the hospital? Out of 25,941, 0 entered a hospital. Last week, 12,000 Christians gathered in worship in Sacramento, California, praying for the restrictions and the opening of churches in that state. And so there's good news and bad news, very confusing news. And behind it all is the good news that this is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. This is Ken Smith reminding you it happened today, September 14th.